taken up weapons training, and they have been retaliating since the very beginning of this war. And now these fights on the streets is aggravating. So the situation remains quite critical, and it is worsening, in fact, each day, Kritzween.
Yes, the Russian attack continues and only escalating by the day as they are now inching closer to the center of Kiev. Republic getting you non-stop live reports. Thank you, Shivani, for getting us that update.
I'm Patrick Lancaster with a special report for Republic Media Network. And right now we are in one of the areas that has been newly captured during this war by Russian and DPR forces. They have taken this area from Ukrainian control.
Right behind me we have a United States, well, part of United States lethal aid to Ukraine, a Javelin anti-tank missile launcher.
Let's just quickly take our viewers through the latest update as far as the siege of Kiev is concerned, which many are already pointing out that it could become imminent. The timeline perhaps is another 24 to 96 hours is what intelligence reports are essentially suggesting. If you go by the American intelligence report as well as the British intelligence report, questions that are being asked about the movement of the Russian armored vehicles, the convoy, which now we are being told that it has been dispersed, which would essentially mean that part of it would be used for mobilizing multiple units of the Russians. You're looking at two very important axes moving towards Kiev, that is the northwest and the northeast axis. Now the northwest is basically where we have seen latest images coming in from the Russian Defense Ministry of paratrooping their troops in the Hostomel airport. That's where they've got a foothold. Then you're also looking at the old Zhytomyr highway, which perhaps could be used to move towards the western side of Kiev. And on the eastern side, if I may tell our viewers where exactly the Russians are currently, it's in a place called Bovory. Now Bovory, some parts of it is still under the Ukrainian control.
New satellite images released showed extensive damage to residential buildings and civilian infrastructure in Mariupol. The Russian troops continue to press their offensive across Ukraine, pounding populated areas with artillery and airstrikes.
From the ground in the war zone, be it Ukraine, Poland or Belarus, getting you all the updates first. This is a ground report as our team has gone across 14 zones, completely devastated, and the widespread damage that has been witnessed.
City administration, along with some of the military experts, they were basically planning of how the movement of the essential supplies is going to take place inside the city. Because remember, what has happened so far is that there is a 40-mile convoy of the Russian army, the armored vehicles, which has basically been stalled. And while the Ukrainian army, they've been able to hold fort in the capital city of Kiev. That's also because they've been able to get their regular supply in terms of their logistics, in terms of the fact that their fuel, etc. All of that has been, they've been able to get it right on time. And that's the reason why perhaps you're looking at they were able to hold fort, at least in Kiev. And this from down south, once you enter, that's the place where the supplies, how the supplies were basically being sent inside. But this was a surprise bombing that's actually taking place, if I may tell all our viewers right now, because most of the people that we have spoken to, they were hoping that this area will not be really touched upon. But what you're seeing right now is that right in the heart of a residential area. Take a look at on the left-hand side. Take a look at the number of buildings that are here. On the other side, take a look what's happened. Here, civilians have been staying, and these civilian areas have been targeted. Take a look at this area, a playground, a sort of a playground, a small playground for kids. These areas have now been targeted by the Russians. So this is the 18th city that Republic Media Network has reached, and we are right now just at the tip of Kiev, where the entire focus has been. the Russian army, as per the latest satellite imagery, they have basically moved in 20 kilometers. They're just about 20 kilometers from the center of Kiev. And it is essentially being said that in the days to come, they perhaps would be trying to enter the city once again.
Odessa is a Black Sea city in southern Ukraine known for its beaches and architecture. Despite the snow, local residents took to streets to make sandbags together with the harmonies of a small choir keeping them company. They covered a nearby statue with sandbags to protect it from any fighting.
Only one message: stop the war. It's our country. Go away. Just doing anything with your Russia. Everything you want, but never come again Ukraine. We hate you and all the politics. We don't need your support.
Odessa is Ukraine's largest port city, considered strategically important to Russian President Vladimir Putin. A former NATO commander said earlier in the week that the Russian offensive was aimed at creating a land bridge between the southeastern Donbas region to the Crimean Peninsula and west to Odessa. Agency report for Republic TV.
Patrick Lancaster with a special report for Republic Media Network. And right now we are in one of the areas that has been newly captured during this war by Russian and DPR forces. They have taken this area from Ukrainian control.
Right behind me, we have a United States, well, part of United States lethal aid to Ukraine, a Javelin anti-tank missile launcher.
New satellite images released showed extensive damage to residential buildings and civilian infrastructure in Mariupol. The Russian troops continue to press their offensive across Ukraine, pounding populated areas with artillery and airstrikes. The port city of Mariupol was once again a focus of intense shelling, with an area around a mosque that was sheltering more than 80 people being targeted. According to the mayor's office, more than 1,500 people have died in Mariupol during the siege. Ukraine's military said Russian forces captured Mariupol's eastern outskirts, tightening their siege of the strategic port. There was no immediate word of casualties from the shelling surrounding the mosque. As Russian invasion against Ukraine enters day 18, Ukrainian President Zelensky said more than 1,300 Ukrainian troops have died so far. Agency report for Republic TV.
And more breaking news coming. This is the latest video that has been released by the former Ukrainian ambassador to Austria of a Russian Grad missile launcher shelling a residential area. We've seen the kind of damage that has especially been witnessed in residential areas and how civilians have been targeted. More on the offensive as far as the Russian side is concerned, and Ukraine releasing this latest video. This has specifically come from a former Ukrainian ambassador to Austria, who's put out a sense of how Russian missiles continue to target residential areas. A launcher that has been seen in a residential area in Ukraine. And many such areas where we've seen this despite evacuation that still continues, sub-zero temperatures in Ukraine, but the Russian side in an all-out offensive, missile launcher shells that have been seen in this video, which was released by a former Ukrainian ambassador to Austria. Samiksha is joining us live from the Mumbai newsroom. Samiksha, more such videos continue to surface, giving us a sense of how the war is still continuing and Russia not really backing down, not really pulling back.
Absolutely, Suesha. So multiple videos we've accessed that only go on to prove how residential places have been the target by Russian troops. In fact, this is a visual that has been put out by former Ukraine's ambassador to Austria. Now, this is a Russian Grad missile launcher that we can see here, which is launching a missile on this particular residential area. We do not yet know the exact location where the Grad missile was hit at, but the visuals show how the residential place has been the target of this missile attack that has happened in Ukraine. Remember, multiple missile attacks continue across Ukraine, specifically in Kharkiv and Mariupol region, that have seen intense fighting between the Russian and the Ukraine forces, and the visual there of a Grad missile launcher of the Russian troops. Of course, a lot of damage there that we can see. This is an aerial shot that shows how a missile, Grad missile, has been launched by the Russian troops in this particular region of Ukraine. What we can see is that the aerial shot shows the magnitude of the devastation that has been caused as a result of this Grad missile. Now remember, it's day 18 of the Russian offensive against Ukraine. A lot of talks have happened in the past as well between the Russian and Ukraine sides, but nothing has transpired so far. Zelensky has again called for a round of meet with his Russian counterpart. Vladimir Putin has even asked the Israel Prime Minister to mediate between the two countries. It remains to be seen what really pans out of this, because earlier in the day Zelensky also called on Israel Prime Minister. He dialed Naftali Bennett and spoke to him regarding the situation that only seems to be escalating by the day. And the visuals here on our screens right now that show the shelling that has happened in this particular residential area of Ukraine. Back to you.
All right, Samiksha, thank you for those details. We now play out a 1-minute report.
Well, it's no longer just Kharkiv. Perhaps this was one of the few days where almost everyone in Ukraine woke up to the air raid alerts. Not a single region in Ukraine that was left out. Starting from Kiev itself to Cherniv, Sumy, or for that matter, even places which were completely untouched when the invasion began. That's the western side of Ukraine. In fact, we're now given to understand is that the Ukrainian officials have confirmed that there were 8 missiles that was targeting a military base, or rather a foreign center where you have humanitarian aid also being provided. This was near the Polish border, not very far from Lviv. Remember, Lviv happens to be one of those few places which is the gateway for all people who are trying to leave Ukraine. So that area which was untouched completely all this while, where missiles landed, in fact, they were prevented by the Ukrainian air defense systems.
Two Russian helicopters were shot down near Skarovsk district in Kherson. One of the survivors was hospitalized. Maxar Technologies recently released a video of extensive damage that was done to Mariupol, especially in residential buildings. The present number of casualties remain unknown. A Russian tank reportedly crushed a vehicle with 3 people in the Zaporizhia region. 3 people, including a child, was reported to have been killed in the crash. Residential neighborhoods were terribly devastated in Mariupol. A soldier was seen showcasing a deep crater right in the middle of the urban environment. Usual scenes of existence of damage to property were observed. Fighters of the controversial Azov battalion released footage of extensive damage near the Bucha region of Kyiv. Dozens of houses, trucks, and other vehicles can be seen turned to nothing.
And in Ukraine, refugees have been allowed to enter Poland without COVID vaccine certificates or proof of negative COVID tests. The head of the Urban Search and Rescue Mission has been observing and treating many of the refugees in the border town of Medyka. He said that checking people for COVID had not been the top priority for Poland. Officials in Poland are mostly treating people with hypothermia, especially small children, and other urgent cases that need attention.
I don't want to say it's not as serious anymore. It's has been overpowered by war situation, but it's still relevant, of course, and hospitals are still going to be filled. But hopefully, people get vaccinated.
The World Health Organization has expressed concerns about the impact of the conflict on public health in Ukraine, including the spread of COVID-19. Agency report for Republic TV.
Back with news, we're tracking on Ukraine. The situation certainly getting from bad to worse. Ukraine once again claiming a residential building in the industrial area in Kharkiv has been attacked by Russian troops. On your screens, visuals that Russia claims, I beg your pardon, Ukraine claims is the aftermath of shelling in Kharkiv. Kharkiv, the second largest city in Ukraine that has been increasingly coming under the Russian attack, has been seeing unpleasant scenes of bombardment, shelling and air attacks that continue from the Russian side, and it pretty much is one of the entry points, as experts have been pointing out, into invasion of Ukraine, as Kharkiv remains strategically a very important city in Ukraine that is coming under attack day in and out. Samiksha is also joining us with more details. Samiksha, and we've been discussing, during our broadcast, how the Russian military on one side is reiterating time and again that they do not intend to target any of those residential areas, but the situation on ground is in complete contradiction to those statements.
Absolutely, Kritzveen. It's day 18 of Russia's offensive against Ukraine, yet we continue to see the bombardments and airstrikes across Ukraine, specifically this Kharkiv region, which is the second largest city of Ukraine. The visuals there speaking for themselves. Look at the magnitude of this.
And well, it is the largest team that is reporting from the ground in the war zone, be it Ukraine, Poland or Belarus, getting you all the updates first. This is a ground report as our team has gone across 14 zones, completely devastated, and the widespread damage that has been witnessed.
City administration, along with some of the military experts, they were basically planning of how the movement of the essential supplies is going to take place inside the city. Because remember, what has happened so far is that there is a 40-mile convoy of the Russian army, the armored vehicles, which has basically been stalled. And while the Ukrainian army, they've been able to hold fort in the capital city of Kiev. That's also because they've been able to get their regular supply in terms of their logistics, in terms of the fact that their fuel, etc. All of that has been, they've been able to get it right on time, and that's the reason why perhaps you're looking at
here.
They were
it isn't going anywhere anytime soon, which is why we need to make the decision to reuse, recycle and reduce if we don't want this waste to overpower us or our future generations. Think about that, and I'll see you again next week. From all of us in Germany and India, goodbye and thanks for watching.
The left-hand side. Take a look at the number of buildings that are on the other
as
side.
more nations try to step in to mediate in the all-out war between Russia and Ukraine,
and these civilian areas have been
Ukrainian President
targeted.
Volodymyr Zelensky has now hinted that he is open for talks with the Russian president.
A playground, a small playground.
Zelensky says he is
kids.
ready for talks with Putin and has proposed an alternate location for the talks and not Belarus. The initial location of the negotiations.
City that by President Zelensky's administration that they are in control, while at the same time they've also put out this indication that they're willing to negotiate. The advisor just a short while back said that they're willing to negotiate with Russia. They're saying that all the other top options, even with the foreign minister, is still open, but they are certainly not very happy with the fact that Belarus being the very place for those negotiations to take place, because they believe that
video
and
which was released by a
one in
former
fact
Ukrainian
shows
ambassador
the attack
to
on the
Austria.
US consulate in Erbil.
Samiksha is joining us live from the Mumbai newsroom. Samiksha, more such videos
So
continue to
that's
surface,
latest that
giving
we're
us a
learning. No
sense
casualties
of
have been
how
reported
the
so
war
far,
is
but
still
the
continuing,
attack on
and
the US
Russia not
consulate
really backing
in
down,
Erbil
not
is
really
what we're
pulling
getting
back.
to know. The
Absolutely,
missiles
Suesha. So
were
multiple
launched
videos
from
we've
Iraq
accessed that
itself.
only go on to prove how residential
No
places
casualties
have been
reported
reported
by Russian
as
troops. In
of
fact,
now.
что? Хотят землю нашу забрать, завоевать.
But они уже был control about this, да?
Как?
Это был украинский территорий, да?
Да, украинский.
И все равно они стреляют?
Стреляли в нас, да. Украинцы в нас стреляли. Да, очень было страшно, очень. Все по подвалам прятались, кто где прятались.
И сейчас это ДНР и Россия контролируют, да?
Россия теперь нас тут... Нас спасла Россия. Россия нас спасла. Российские войска. Пришли сюда, да.
Это хорошо?
Хорошо, конечно. Российские войска пришли и нас освободили. И нас освободили.
А украинцы чего только не натворили.
Они страшно тут. А что в Мариуполе там творится, говорят, сидят все по подвалам, не выпускают людей голодные, без воды, без света, без всего, без еды.
Ага.
Страшно, очень страшно. Наши дети там, в Мариуполе, мы не можем увидеться с ними как. Потому что они стоят и не пускают их оттуда.
Украинские не пускают, да?
Окружают, все заминировали и не выпускают оттуда людей, детей.
Украинские войска сказал, украинский государство сказал, это Россия не пускает. Как вы могу сказать за это?
Да нет, как это Россия не пускает? Украинские не пускают. Они заминировали там в городе и не выпускают людей, не дают им коридор людей выпустить оттуда, с Мариуполя, чтобы они уехали. Вот. Они прячутся, украинские, эти нацисты прячутся за нашими детьми, прячутся.
Как зовут?
Очень любят.
И где мы находимся сейчас?
Очень.
Где мы находимся сейчас?
Мы находимся где? Волновахский район. Волновахский район. Это село Анадоль наше, вот Анадоль село. Да, ну у нас тут их много очень стояли. Очень. А потом, когда уже российские начали идти, с Гранитного, с Карани, их начали их тут бить. Украинских. И они стали текать тогда уже. Тут танки были.
Они стояли там.
Ну там стояли, в карьере стояли. В карьере стояли. И тут за посадкой стояли. Они вбили сюда. И разбомбили. Тут у нас очень много. У нас один человек погиб. Осколки попали в него.
От кто стреляет это? Это украинский стреляет или кто?
Украинские стреляли, да. Осколки попали в него и погиб человек один у нас. Вот так вот. Очень много домов пострадали, окна побиты, крыши снесло. Да, очень страшно было, очень. Такое перенесли мы. Очень.
Спасибо. Счастливо.
Спасибо российским войскам, что нас освободили, слава Богу.
Thanks very much for staying with us. My name is Amita Wadhwa. With the largest war reporting team, Republic Media Network is the only global channel reporting from across 14 devastated cities in all of Ukraine, where Russian forces have advanced closer to the Ukrainian capital of Kiev from the north, west and the northeast. Ukraine President Zelensky has also said that Russia was sending new forces after suffering what he has said were its biggest losses in decades. Let's get you more exclusive ground reports.
I'm Patrick Lancaster, and right now we are in the city of Volnovakha, and the Donetsk People's Republic, or anti-Ukraine government forces have announced that today is the first day this city is under complete control of their forces. Now we can see the devastation here in this town, these apartment buildings just destroyed, and if we come over here we can see more apartment buildings destroyed, and this amount of military equipment. We're told this was a Ukrainian tank that was left here by them. Just massive amounts of military equipment and just destroyed buildings. We're told this area here was used as a Ukrainian military position to fire on the positions and the city of Donetsk and other villages around it. So now we're going to try to find some locals that are still here, talking to find out what the real situation is here and show you exactly what the people that are living this war have to say.
Что ты хочешь? упали, они все поразбивали. Мне двери разбили, дверь закрытую. Я при открытой двери сплю, понимаешь? Вот в чем дело.
Ага.
И холодно, ни батареи, все холодное, все. Газа нет, света нет, воды нет, тепла нет. Так же 16 дней сижу вот так. Как?
Ага.
Вот так, скажи, дети ДНРовцы, что они не наведут порядок? Сколько их можно ждать? Я не знаю. Где тут Красный Крест? Где он?
А я не знаю.
Я сейчас расскажу. Красный Крест и гуманитарная помощь уже сюда идет. Но и не могут подойти, потому что украинская армия ее разбивает. На дороге они не могут сюда пройти. Сейчас дорогу прочистят и к вам приедут.
Так уже же отогнали эти...
Они стреляют издалека, вы же понимаете, что черти откуда. Сейчас
Я
чуть-чуть.
слышу, что гав.
Потерпите, пожалуйста, чуть-чуть.
Стекла побили.
Рядом с вами военные, вас в беду не дадут.
Я знаю.
Потерпите, пожалуйста, осталось совсем чуть-чуть, я вам честно говорю.
Вот чуть-чуть уходили, в понедельник говорили чуть-чуть, мы идем за нами.
Ну вот видите как.
Ну, они как собаки выглядят из-за угла и стреляют. Ну то, что...
Скажите, пожалуйста, как вас зовут?
Меня зовут Ольга Дмитриевна, мне 86 лет. Я сама сижу в квартире 16 лет в голоде. Ну, кушать то сосед принесет, то кипятка, то тарелку супа принесет. Ну, нету ничего, ни газа, ни света, ни воды, ни тепла, батареи холодные. 16 дней сидим вот так.
Скажите, пожалуйста, а надежда есть, что все будет хорошо, что помогут?
Очень надеждой ждем, что будет хорошо. Мы были в Донецкой области, это наш окон, и мы будем жить хорошо, мы только надеемся на ДНР.
Спасибо вам большое.
Да, мы только их и ждем, потому что с этих грабителей украинцев ничего не получается. Они не понимают жизни, они одни воры. Мы ждем только ДНР. И все.
А здесь были украинские военные?
Были двери раскурочили, у меня дверь открытая на проход, кто хочет, тот и заходит. Вырвали замок с двери и все. Потом в подвале по имени Рома. Пойдите, скажите, Рома, тебя бабушка зовет. Пойдите вот тут вот в подвал на краю дома. Пойдите, скажите ему. Скажи, Рома, приди, тебя бабушка зовет. Он мне не такой просит, но сегодня не приносил.
Спасибо.
Будьте здоровы. Дай Бог вам всем здоровья.
Можно вас фотографировать? Такая красивая...
Ну, это украинский, да, это ихний, вражеский танк.
Ага, понял. И откуда это было?
Откуда? С центра Волновахи, там подбит стоял. Как бы думали, безнадежно. Гусеница подбита, траки отломаны с одной стороны.
Ага.
У нас получилось.
Понял.
Запустить.
Что это?
Ну, это обозначение, нас видели в свои. Мы поставили, просто приклеили.
Ага.
Чтобы сейчас хотя бы доехать, чтобы нас никто не подбил, своих же не расстреляли.
Как зовут?
Как зовут? Паш.
Let's get you another video of devastation that is coming from Kharkiv, which is the second largest city there in all of Ukraine, where this is the Milovka region in Kharkiv that has bore the brunt of the consequences of the all-night of shelling that has been taking place. There has been a shell that has also hit a residential yard, and Russian troops are continuing to shell humanitarian aid near Kharkiv. Samiksha, what more do we know?
Amita, so the visuals we've accessed show the aftermath of the shelling that happened in Ukraine's second largest city, which is Kharkiv. You can see the burnt out vehicles there, and also the buildings that have been devastated as a result of shelling by the Russian troops in the Kharkiv region. Now remember, a lot of humanitarian corridors have been announced in the past few days on part of Moscow, but it did not transpire as it is because of the shelling and airstrikes that continue to disrupt the humanitarian corridors. And you can see the damage that has been done as a result of the shelling by the Russian troops. In fact, what we are also told is that the Russian troops have bombed a neurological care home in Kharkiv, where a lot of residents were residing, but we do not know the extent of casualties, if any, but a lot of damage that has been done as a result of the shelling on part of Russia. Now, what we are also told is that 330 residents who were living in this specific building, of residential building in Kharkiv, was destroyed as a result of the Russian shelling. You can see it's all it's all been devastated. We do not know if those people who were living in this residential building have been safely evacuated yet. But you can see the damage that has been done as a result of the shelling and airstrikes by the Russian troops. The invasion that enters its 18th day today. Of course, no hope for the Ukrainians living here, because the humanitarian corridors that have been announced in the past have only failed because of the constant air shelling and bombardments in the region. Back to you.
Absolutely. Let's get you multiple angles also from the videos that have been emerging, because 3 weeks of utter devastation that has been showing, and Russia is still showing no signs of stopping, even as the airstrikes continue with the destruction in Kharkiv and other Ukrainian cities. There are 2 videos there of showing the aftermath really of what has been an online shelling and airstrikes that have been taking place in the second largest city. In fact, Kharkiv was one of the first cities there that has been bombed ever since this conflict began on the 24th of February. So we are looking at many of those residential areas, apartments in the central city of Kharkiv, where there has been a flurry of alerts that also continue to come in, but many of those scenes of devastation, as many of those apartments especially that have been now left badly damaged.
You can also see, yes, right behind me, Republic showing you Russian army convoy. You can see Russian army convoy. There are the border areas. These are pictures which we are showing. You can see the green mark is there. Public has exclusively shown you these pictures where Russian army convoy could be clearly seen. The border Mazar area is just 45 kilometers from here, and they exclusively showed these pictures from the Belarus-Ukraine border.
Morning and welcome. Thanks very much for tuning in. Top of the hour, let's continue to get you the latest pictures that are coming in of multiple explosions that have now been reported in the other cities of Lviv and in Kherson as well. There is dust, debris that continues to spread across as those pictures are coming in of many of those areas, including residential places that have been badly affected because of the non-stop shelling that has been taking place. Samiksha, can you help us understand those latest pictures that have come in?
Well, Amita, the latest that we are learning is that explosions have been heard in Lviv and Kherson. Now, remember, this comes on day 18 of Russia's invasion against Ukraine. Even as there have been multiple talks between Russia and Ukraine, nothing has transpired so far. Continuous bombardments and airstrikes being reported there. In fact, we are also being told that the Ukraine's defense ministry has said that 7 Ukrainians have died as a result of shelling that happened at a convoy of refugees near the Kiev region. Now, remember, Kiev. Yesterday we reported how the Russian troops were advancing into the Kiev region, and the latest that we are told is that 7 Ukrainians have died as a result of shelling of a refugee convoy. We'll get more details on that, but those are the visuals on your screens right now of 2 Russian choppers that have also been hit in the Kherson region. Remember, Kherson is a region that has already fallen to the Russian army, but there's still a lot of unrest and continuous bombardments and shelling being reported in this particular region as well. This also comes in the backdrop of Zelensky saying that Ukraine will continue to give stiff resistance to Russia, even as the airstrikes and bombardments continue. Zelensky has also called for talks with the Russian counterpart in Jerusalem and has asked Naftali Bennett also to mediate between the two countries. This, in the latest, what we are also told is that Zelensky also dialed Naftali Bennett and also asked him to mediate between Russia and Ukraine. Still a lot of unrest being reported there. The latest that we are told is that explosions that have been heard in Kherson as well as Lviv regions. We do not yet know much details, any casualty as of now that has
said to be trapped in Kherson, even as Russia said that it was one of the first cities that they seem to have captured ever since what they call as the military operation began. This is the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson and many other areas, including in Lviv, that explosions that have been reported. Samiksha, thank you.
Volnovakha, a town located nearly halfway between the rebel capital city of Donetsk and the Azov port city of Mariupol, will now be controlled by Russian-backed forces. Residents of Volnovakha came to terms with the Ukrainian town being captured by the separatist forces. The strategic town has seen some of the heaviest fighting so far between Ukrainian forces and fighters from the breakaway Donetsk People's Republic. The battle has laid waste to much of the town. Residential buildings and streets were destroyed by artillery fire as the separatist forces captured Volnovakha. Local residents say that they have spent much of the past 2 weeks hiding out in the makeshift bomb shelter. Residents also claim that the forces did not let anyone evacuate through humanitarian corridors that led into Russia. The refugee base was located in the basement of an administrative building that has been used as a command center by the Ukrainian armed forces. Agency report, Republic TV.
All right, Ukraine's Ministry of Defense has informed that 7 Ukrainian civilians, including a child, died when Russia shelled on the humanitarian convoys of refugees and forced them to turn back. The 7 were amongst those hundreds of people who have tried to flee from the village there of Permoa, which is around 20 kilometers northeast of Kyiv. Let's get an expert point of view on the same. Major General P.K. Sehgal sir is with us right now on the broadcast. Sir, good morning to you. I want your understanding of what's been happening in the last 18 days, sir. As far as the Russian military is concerned, it is being said to be encircling the capital of Kyiv as close as barely 20 kilometers away. But do you believe that the operation in a way has been stalled or has slowed down when it comes to the immediate capture of the capital, sir?
Very interesting. Last 18 days, Russia has not been able to achieve any of the war aims. The immediate war aim was to restore the surrender of the army and nothing but carrying out racial bombing of several cities. Kherson, they've been able to capture it from day one. But the very fact that there is unbelievable resistance to being offered to them, actually they have captured no city at all. Even Mariupol that they claim that they've captured still continues to function under its mayor. As far as Kyiv is concerned, they are very reluctant to move into Kyiv because every single street, every space where, as well as
right, sir.
As well as every house has been fortified. And Russia will suffer enormous casualties should they move in. The roads are functional, but the entire area, countryside, to be converted into a marsh. Permafrost was frozen, and it's now become a perma marsh. But we call that Napoleon suffered a heavy defeat in the same area. Hitler's army suffered a same defeat in the same area, and the Russians know that they are up against a very tough resistance, and if they move into Kyiv, they will suffer a phenomenal amount of casualties. To help the entire world and solve the human crisis to a very large extent, Putin has been proposing a one-to-one meeting with Putin under the intermediary of the Israeli Prime Minister. Putin is unlikely to accept it. Putin suffers from miscalculation that if he manages to starve the people, cut off their electricity, cut off their water, cut off their food, they will surrender and they will collapse. Nothing of the sort is going to happen. The more atrocities that he commits, the greater is the strengthening of the will of those people. Under these circumstances, Russia ought to cut its losses. Should it not cut its losses, what is likely to happen is a huge amount of economic cost to Russia, economic catastrophe for Europe, as well as economic impacts on the rest of the world, including India. It is high time that humanitarian corridors are.
Especially if we talk about the humanitarian crisis, sir, because we would also like to throw more light on that issue where what is being claimed by Ukraine, that just 9 out of the 14 agreed upon corridors were said to be opened up and more than 13,000 people were evacuated around the country. And what is being said that in the last 17 days, at least 2.5 million people have fled Ukraine.
As the war enters its 3rd week, Russia has widened its offensive in Ukraine. Much of the eastern Ukrainian town of Volnovakha lay in ruins on Friday after heavy fighting between Ukrainian troops and separatist forces supported by Russia. Residential buildings and streets were destroyed by artillery fire as separatist forces captured the town. A resident of Volnovakha said street battles erupted around her building, forcing her to flee to a basement for shelter, but she wasn't able to evacuate her bedridden mother in time.
Мы сидели в подвалах, ходили вокруг, стреляли. Могли выйти, больше в подвале Потом я подошла к солдатам, говорю, мальчики, у меня там мама лежать, я могу, я не могу зайти. Они прошли, правда, ребята хотели вытащить ее в подвал, но в итоге она уже умерла.
The remaining residents of the town, which is without water and electricity, were making fires in their courtyards to warm up and to heat water. The Russian side announced ceasefire and humanitarian corridor in the city. But with damaged buildings, erupted streets and perplexed innocent civilians, the situation on the ground tells a different story. Agency Report, Republic TV.
Protesters in Tel Aviv held signs to show their support for the Ukrainians against the Russian invasion.
The world is not doing enough to help Ukraine because Russia is a big, powerful country with a very big army, and I think Ukraine need much more help, and I think including troops perhaps.
Israel is one of the only countries to have good working relations with both Russia and Ukraine. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has repeatedly expressed support for the Ukrainian people, and Israel has sent humanitarian aid to the country. But he has stopped short of condemning Russia for its invasion. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said he is open for talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Israel, but only if there is a ceasefire in place. Bennett spoke repeatedly with Zelensky and the leaders of France and Germany as he sought help to mediate an end to the war. Agency Report, Republic TV.
There are pictures of attacks and advances inside Ukraine and other cities too. 1/10 of the total refugees are in Poland. More than 15 lakh people have already reached Poland. There are now reactions from Sweden and Finland who have stood for Ukraine, and they are now trying to ally with the NATO forces, and this is what is not acceptable to Russia.
So even as Ukraine sees unprecedented refugee crisis, visual shows Ukrainian citizens reaching Melbourne on Saturday. The Ukrainian citizens were seen reuniting with their relatives on their arrival.
Constant bombing, constant alarms. People constantly hiding out. In surrounding cities, the fighting and the shooting.
Well, the unceasing violence in cities throughout Ukraine has prompted yet more residents to join the 2.5 million who are estimated to have already left the country. Some Ukrainians have also either decided to stay put or haven't yet been able to leave. Dozens of volunteers from around the world have traveled to the small Polish town of Medica, where it stands at the border with Ukraine to help out with the refugees, mostly women and children, who are fleeing the violence. The United Nations Human Rights Office has said it has documented around 549 civilian deaths and 957 injuries since the beginning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. As Russia-Ukraine war continues, the Red Cross is providing life-saving aid to those in need. A video shows volunteers of the Belarusian Red Cross that have set up tents with electricity and hot water on the border with Ukraine for the refugees.
As the Russian troops close in on the capital of Ukraine, and as more nations try to step in to mediate in the all-out war between Russia and Ukraine, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has now hinted that he is open for talks with the Russian president. Zelensky says he is ready for talks with Putin and has proposed an alternate location for the talks and not Belarus, the initial location of the negotiations.
By President Zelensky's administration that they are in control, while at the same time they've also put out this indication that they're willing to negotiate. The advisor just a short while back said that they're willing to negotiate with Russia. They're saying that all the other talk options, even with the foreign minister, is still open, but they are certainly not very happy with the fact that Belarus being the very place for those negotiations to take place, because they believe that Belarus has already aligned with Russia. They've given their territory to the Russian troops troops to carry out attacks on Ukraine, so they're not okay with the fact that these talks or these peace talks are going to take place in Belarus. They're looking at another location altogether, Jerusalem becoming one of the options open to the Zelensky administration for any sort of talks that are going to take place with Russia.
This comes on the backdrop of the multiple calls between the Israel Prime Minister and the leaders of Ukraine and Russia, even as the war rages on. Zelensky has proposed the Israel Prime Minister to act as an intermediary in the talks. Meanwhile, the Russian offensive continues in several parts of the country, and the Russian troops are just minutes away from the capital city of Kiev, but Ukraine maintains all's well.
This is the place where we have seen the kind of shelling that's taking place, a lot of movement of the convoy from the Ukrainian side, and